Right, we're on. Just yesterday I did a lesson with a chap called Brian. Brian had a problem with impact. Brian's a good golfer, his handicap was 2, but at impact there was a lot of loft on the golf club, so his trajectory was really pretty high. There was a lack of penetration, so we worked on a little drill to understand what happens with the club head at impact and how we can get a lower, more penetrating ball flight. It was really an interesting one. Hopefully this will help you too. You'll also be able to understand how the golf club works a little bit more at impact to get that penetrating ball flight and prevent it ballooning into the air. Pure strike. Everyone wants pure strike, don't they? Let's go. So at impact, Brian, it was a very, very good swing. As I say, he's a single figure golfer. At impact, Brian would come in and there'd be quite a lot of loft on the golf club. So there wasn't a huge amount of rotation through the shot. It was very much a case of delivering the club back to its address position, so shaft straight up and down, and not a huge amount of forward shaft lean. Getting Brian's shaft to lean forward at impact immediately produced the ball turf strike, and it changed the low point of the arc. But how did we do that? How did we get him to understand that? It was quite a simple one. Brian, being the educated golfer that he is, was able to understand how the body works in order to get the club into that position, but we needed a visual aid to be able to see that. So we popped something onto his club face, which helped. So I took this metal rod with a magnet on it, placed it in the middle of his club head, and then he was very much aware of where the club face was both aiming in relation to target, pointing in relation to target, and also the loft that was on the club or off the club through impact. He was able to understand what the club head's actually doing with a really, really good visual aid. Now I appreciate not everybody has this facility, but if you just use a T with a little bit of blue tack on the end, that'll work just as well. So Brian's address position, he was very much aware of where club face was aiming and where the loft on the golf club was. At impact, Brian was back to a similar position. Ideally, loft needed to be taken off. So the body turning through, he was able to take the loft off. Back to address position, loft on. Impact, loft was off, forward shaft lean. Now that's all very well, but how did Brian get to that position in the first place? I had to explain to Brian what to look for in relation to the club face on the way back, on the way down, and through impact. So of course, what does that do? Well, it immediately educates the hands and the body. As the club came back, Brian had to understand that at halfway back, the club pointed to the ground. The face of the golf club was still pointed to the ground. Not dramatically, but it was definitely pointing to the ground. Halfway back, you could see there the leading edge of Brian's club. If it marries up with the spine angle of the player, the golf club actually points to the ground. That is too open, that there is too closed. So leading edge, matching the spine of the player, put the club face facing to the ground. And that position there was so vital because they had to get back to that position on the way down. So going through that alignment or that position on the way down with the club face pointing to the ground, the back of the left hand or the knuckles in the left hand are out of view there on the way down, which is a classic Hogan position. These knuckles on the back of this left hand, as I look down, I can't see them at all. There's no way I can see them. The leading edge marries up with the spine on the way down and the grooves point to the ground. So therefore the club face is closing over coming into the shot. We're not leaving this club face open, which is adding the loft. If I leave the face open, you'll see there, I can see my knuckles. So leaving the face open, seeing the knuckles, or closing the face over, putting the grooves back to the ground. Those knuckles on the left hand here are disappearing as I come into impact. And of course for Brian it was all visual awareness, so he could understand what he's seeing and how the body reacts to get to that position. Then of course from there as he come through, if he didn't turn the body, he would go back to standard loft, address loft, static loft. If the body kept turning, he would come through and there'd be less loft on the golf club as opposed to the standard static loft. So a dynamic loft, no knuckles, grooves to the ground, turning of the body, dynamic loft is lower, so this 8 iron I have in my hand is probably playing about 6.5, 7 iron. And then from there on the way through, what's to happen? Well, the closing of the face here has to continue and rotate through, so the back of the left hand disappeared behind the player and the grooves pointed behind the player, therefore the leading edge of the club, again marrying up with the spine, but behind the player. So we came from here to here to here, all in one action, and a great visual aid. So that visual aid there for Brian, it obviously registered straight away. You could feel how the body was reacting differently to that. So using the visual aid for 60 seconds or so, just feeling the motion, okay, the club face has to be there, there and there, there and there. What's the body doing to make that happen? What is the body doing to make that happen? Well, the body on the way down, on the way back, the back of the left hand stays more towards the ground. On the way down, the back of the left hand stays more towards the ground. Then the body turns, which keeps the back of the left hand pointing towards the ground, and the back of the left hand disappears behind me. So Brian was able to feel, okay, that's what happens with body turn. And the face is fully controlled. So he took a few swipes at that. Then he stepped up just with short shots to feel there was the position, there was the position, and there was the position. Stepped up to feel these motions. Hit some pretty pure golf shots, just little halfies, ball turf strike. Again, there, grooves to the ground, body turns, handle of the shafts forward because I understand the loft comes off, back of the left hand behind me, leading edge, ball turf again, all good stuff. As I've done there, the divots were quite deep with Brian as well because he was really accentuating the fact that the handle of the golf club leans forward, so the angle of attack was a really negative one. So he was really hitting on the way down, but of course that's the penetrating ball flight. Once he added more speed, the dynamics changed slightly, so therefore the divot wasn't quite as thick or as deep, but the ball flight was much more penetrating and much more professional. So the same action with a little bit more speed added, so therefore longer swing. Feel that, feel that, feel that. The visual aid was good, all good stuff. Hit the ball really well, nice shallow divot, body turned, understanding where the club face is at what part of the swing. I hope that's helped you. Let me understand how you can get a penetrating ball flight, keeping it down in the wind also. Understanding where the club head is and what the club head needs to do is vital. Once you can understand and feel that, the body will reassemble itself to that, and then it's up to you guys to go and get a basket of balls and go and work it out. Before you do that, subscribe to this channel. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye bye.